Former DA leader Tony Leon joins us there via those studios. And on our Skype line, we've got Ongama Mtimka, who is a political analyst. Thanks very much, gentlemen, for talking to us. Mr. Leon, let's talk to you as a former leader of the now official opposition. It's been a messy saga, the saga around Mayor Patricia de Lille. How would you have handled it differently?
Well, I did have to fire Mayor of Cape Town back in 2001, Peter Marais, and there were a lot of complications, but the matter was resolved in 1 month. This thing has been going on for 17 months, and while I think certainly Patricia de Lille has a case to answer, or several cases, I think there have been a lot of rookie errors committed by the DA, and I think it needs to really get its act together. We're on the eve, practically, of a general election, and this is creating a sense of disillusionment and disaffection among the party's core supporters. So I wouldn't have started from here, but there they are, and they've got an agreement, which apparently is not an agreement. They've got a mayor who's departing, who might not be departing, and they've committed some factual mistakes, although all this obscures the fact that Patricia de Lille has been fingered by an independent inquiry in high levels of maladministration. So I think it's bad on both sides, and it needs to end sooner rather than later.
Ongama, Tony Leon talks about several rookie errors being made in how the matter between the DA and Patricia de Lille has been handled so far. Do you reckon that part of those rookie errors must surely fall on the lap of Mmusi Maimane, the leader of the official opposition?
Well, I wouldn't say so, but I think the entire Democratic Alliance in Cape Town, as well as nationally, has got to answer for this. Because, you know, when this started, they said they had a legal case. But what you then found out is that they explored political avenues to remove her. Among them, a tactical use of her intentions to resign from the party after clearing her name as a way to get rid of her. Now, my question is, why did they need to resort to the political approaches when they had a very strong case against her and neglect following that case through? You know, at some stage, for example, they got the council in Cape Town to, they got their caucus in Cape Town to vote her out. And apparently, there was an overwhelming support from her caucus to remove her. What then happened is that they didn't follow that through by putting through a motion in the Cape Town Council. They referred it upwards to the Federal Council, which for me was one of the biggest blunders they committed. Because in so doing, they took what was supposedly an administrative issue and made it political, thin as that line was, but they push it exclusively to become a political witch hunt, and therefore proved her theory that beyond what were the legal issues were used to advance a political imperative. And for that, I would disagree. On the basis of that, I would disagree with the notion that Patricia de Lille's issue is mainly refusing to answer on pure administrative principles. There's a lot of questions raised about the true rationale for the move against her, whether it was first the political intention to deal with her, or and the legal issues were found later, or the vice versa. But regardless of what the trail of evidence is, for now the impression that's been created is that it was mainly the political imperative that's been there, and it's been willy-nilly. Hence, we can't overlook the argument she's making that even the Bowman's report may have been politically manipulated.
Mr. Leon, I mean, I get the sense from what Ongama is saying, and several other analysts as well, that this, in many respects, is a witch hunt against Patricia de Lille. I mean, I don't know if you were watching just last week, I'm sure you were, but there was absolute chaos in the Cape Town Council, with 5 members resigning in just one sitting. In the way that Mmusi Maimane dealt with that chaos and how it must surely be affecting the reputation of the Democratic Alliance. Very blasé, implicating these 5 councillors in a report, falsely implicating them in that report, and also then refusing to apologize for falsely implicating them in that report. Talk to us about the kind of reputational damage that the DA is suffering as we count down to next year's elections.
Well, I think the damage is quite significant, and I also think that the errors are compounding upon each other. You mentioned one of them. Then there's now a dispute with the Speaker of the City of Cape Town and the Mayor as to whether she sent him a letter or not. So the whole thing communicates an irresoluteness and a messiness, and certainly the leadership must take responsibility. But I think there's something problematic in the management of the DA, and I think the management needs to be shaken up of the party so that they can get back on their message for the 29 election and not keep treading on the message, because I think that's where the problem sets in. Look, having said all that, and I agree with the analysis, I do think that politics is a very fast-moving business here and everywhere else in the world. And if the DA can batten down its hatches right now, get back to its core business, there are going to be a lot of other issues that are going to occupy the voters' mind. So I do hope, not just for their sake, but for the sake of Cape Town, of which I'm a resident, that this matter reaches closure, that we stop fixating on the needs of politicians, start worrying about the needs of the ratepayers, and then get back to addressing the core concerns of voters, all voters, everywhere in South Africa, and not just one corner of South Africa and Cape Town. That's what a national political party needs to do, and the DA needs to do it sooner rather than later.
Ongama, if you're hearing what Tony Leon is talking about, focusing on the people who really matter, I mean, these are some of the very serious allegations that have come up in the wake of those 5 resignations in council by those DA members. Allegations that key budgetary spending is not equally allocated to the poorer areas around Cape Town. The DA has previously told us 67% of its budget is spent on service delivery to the poorer areas in the city of Cape Town. That was later disproven, in fact, by Africa Check. Look, we're not members of the Democratic Alliance. We don't know what goes on inside closed doors, but what do you make of these allegations of racism within the party and, in fact, how the city is run?
First of all, we must accept that politicians will attempt to maximize from every development that's taking place. That the citation of racism, while it does need to be taken cognizance of, I wouldn't be surprised that at some stage when allegations were made that the Democratic Alliance was racist, these very same councillors would have defended that position. Yeah. So while acknowledging that where there's smoke, there is fire, because those councillors in Nelson Mandela Bay that have left the party have also cited similar reasons and weakened the party's position in council. They cited similar reasons. So where there's smoke, there's fire, but overemphasis can be made by politicians pursuant to a particular agenda. The Democratic Alliance does need, even though it's made some strides based on its last conference, to actually acknowledge diversity and have it feature prominently in its regulations. But it does need to have a very clear strategic agenda, whether they want to continuously transform themselves to attract a wider public, or they are happy as a party to defend minority interests. And there's nothing wrong with either of the decisions. But when you don't have clarity from a strategic point of view, you then prevent yourself from making the necessary changes that help you maximize on whatever strategic position you're taking.
Tony Leon, let's bring you back into the discussion as former leader of the Democratic Alliance. What is your response to what Ongama is saying? I saw you sort of commenting to yourself as he was speaking.
Well, I agree with Ongama, actually, on the central thrust of what he said, and I'll just add 2 things. The first is that I would treat with extreme caution the exit remarks of floor-crossing politicians. I mean, they're going to say things because they want to maximize the damage to the party they've just left. So I discount a great deal of what they said, given the motives for what caused them to say it. On the second issue, I think the DA is trying to do something very difficult and very noble, actually. It's trying to do both of those things that Ngama mentioned. On the one, it's trying to bring minorities and the majority together under one political roof. And that is going to cause tension. It is going to cause problems. But I think it is a goal worth striving for. And it's not an easy one, as we're seeing with some of the maneuverings that he drew attention to. But, you know, if you go back to our core document, the Constitution, it enjoins us to do precisely that South Africa should be, must become, and is meant to be a home for all, and that's members of the minority communities and the majority. And so I think that goal, however muddied it might be at the moment because of the shenanigans in Cape Town and elsewhere for the DA, is a very significant one, and the party needs to keep at it, even though it's had some setbacks en route.
All right, well, thanks very much to both of you. Tony Leon joining us from our studios in Cape Town. He is, of course, former leader of the Democratic Alliance, and Ongama Mtimka, a political analyst, just shedding some light on some of the issues at play within the official opposition. Of course, Patricia Lille, her future still uncertain. Today would have been her final day in office, but she says her resignation is in fact not a formal one, as it hasn't been received by the head of council just yet. She is set to be filing papers in the Western Cape High Court at around 1 o'clock this afternoon.